All right, Rabbosai, good morning. Let's begin. Good Erev Yom Tov. Last daf, Baruch Hashem, of 5779, and a beautiful daf it is. Today's daf is Yud Beis. Our shir this morning is dedicated by Ben Goldberg, our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Elul, in memory of his parents and as well as in the schus of all the members of the Kila, that your tefillah should be answered over the Yomim Noraim. Our shir is also dedicated by Yonason and Rachel Wolf of Highland Park, New Jersey, in memory of Rachel's father. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. We'll say just also a very special thank you to Saeed and the rest of the Chevra. You know, the shul was taken down and put back up, and that we have a mini base medrash is like a big thing, especially with everything going on. So especially Ashkach to Saeed and to I know there were a number of other people who helped last night. Shkoyach, thank you very much. We'll say with that, let's begin. Mishnah Yud Aleph on the base, the bottom of the daf. Dishun mizbeach hapanimi v'hamenorah lo nanin v'lo molin. It's a very interesting concept. The Mishnah says over here, Dishun mizbeach hapanimi. So remember again, we spoke about last week some of the halachos concerning the ashes on the outer mizbeach, the mizbeach hachitzon, and we discussed the idea that the ashes of the mizbeach hachitzon are subject to Meilah even after they're removed from the mizbeach, meaning even after Trumas Hadeshen. Ultimately, again, there is still an issue of Meilah vis-a-vis those ashes. Here the Mishnah speaks about what about the ashes of the inner Mizbeach, which of course is the Mizbeach used for Ketoras, as well as the menorah. So remember again, the Ketoras burns, even after it burns, there's still some ash left. The menorah burns, but even after the menorah burns, there's ashes. They call it ashes, really it's the residue from the wicks. So what's the halacha concerning those ashes? Lo nanin, you're not permitted to get hana from it, but halacha l'maisa v'lo mo'alin. But ultimately, again, they are not subject to Meilah. Look at Rashi. Dishun mizbeach hapanimi ba'amenorah hadeshen shalem hayamotzion umanicho etzel mizbeach hachitzon makom shumaniach trumas hadeshen shal mizbeach hachitzon v'kodem shenichu shan lo nanin v'lo mo'alin. So actually, what we're going to see is, interestingly enough, the leftover ash from the inner mizbeach, as well as the leftover ash from the menorah, was actually taken out and put by the side of the Mizbeach, the same place where the ashes of the Mizbeach were placed. So this is an incredible idea that you wouldn't necessarily know just based on reading the Psukim, because as we're going to see, the Psukim are not necessarily clear about this fact. But again, when you are left over, the same way that we spoke about, that from the outer Mizbeach, you would take from the ash on top, and you would place it by the side of the Mizbeach on the ground. You would take the leftover ashes from the Mizbeach HaPanimi, from the Ketores, the leftover ashes from the menorah, and you would place them by the ground, by the ground, the side of the Mizbeach HaChitzon, the outer altar. Hamakdish disha metchila. But if you go ahead and you're makdish, in other words, if you go ahead and halacha lamaisa, you are makdish the ashes of the Mizbeach HaPnimi or of the menorah, then ultimately, again, they will in fact be subject to Meilah. Torin shelo higia zmanon. Similarly, if you have turtle doves that have not yet reached their age. Remember again, for bird offerings, so for Torin and Bnei Yonah, there's a certain minimum age and a certain maximum age. So if the Torin have not yet reached their minimum age, or Ubnei Yonah sha'avar zmanan, or ultimately again pigeons that have gone ahead and aged out, lo nanin v'lo mo'alin. Ultimately, again, you're not permitted to get hana, but ultimately, again, one is also not subject to Meilah. Good. So says the Gemara. So now what the Gemara is going to focus on is the following idea. The Mishnah assumes that we knew this concept that when you have leftover ash from the Mizbeach HaPanimi, the inner altar, which is the Ketores, and the menorah, that remaining ash is taken outside of the mikdash, of the heichal, and deposited on the ground by the Mizbeach HaChitzon. So the Gemara now focuses on that. Where do we know that from? So Bishlama, the Gemara says, Bishlama, top of Yud Beis, Mizbeach HaChitzon, Dichsiv Bei V'Samo Eitzel HaMizbeach. So I know that halacha l'maisa, that the ash of the outer Mizbeach is placed on the ground by the Mizbeach, because the pasuk itself says v'samo eitzel hamizbeach. Right? The pasuk says v'lava shakoin midobad umichnes sebad yilbasha bizaro v'herimes hadesh nashar tochal ish es haola ala mizbeach v'samo eitzel hamizbeach. The Torah explicitly says you shall take from the ash that accumulates on the top of the Mizbeach. Remember, the Mizbeach we're being referred to over here is which Mizbeach? The Mizbeach Achitzon, the outer altar. You shall take the ash which accumulates on the outer Mizbeach, and you shall place it by the side of the Mizbeach itself. However, Mizbeach HaPnimi Minalan. Rabbi say, from where do I know that you take the leftover ash from the inner altar, right? Which is what we call the Mizbeach HaZahav, the golden altar, which was used only and exclusively for Ketores. How do I know that if I have leftover ash on that Mizbeach, that is taken out and deposited on the ground by the side of the outer altar? Look at Rashi, top Rashi and Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Eladishon mizbeach hapenim minalon shemanicho etzal mizbeach hachitzon v'shumolin bo la'achar shebaim trumas desha. So we'll say Rashi adds in a very important point over here, which is actually quite fascinating. Remember again, once you bring out the ash, so the Mishnah told me that the ash of the inner mizbeach, Rabbi say, what's the halacha? Is it subject to Meilah? No. Right now, subject to Meilah. What Rashi's pointing out over here is, however, once you go ahead and you bring it outside and you put it in the pile of ash on the side of the Mizbeach, meaning down on the ground, it does become subject to Meilah, which makes sense because, again, then it becomes mixed in with the rest of the Trumas Hadeshen, and we know already from last week's shir that Allah Chamai said that is subject to Meilah. So now what the Gemara says is as follows, but we're not focusing on Meilah right now. The Gemara is actually asking a much more simple question, which is, where do I know that you take the leftover ash from the inner Mizbeach and you place that on the ground by the outer Mizbeach with the rest of the Trumas Hadeshen? Where is that? Where do I know that from? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you, Amar Balazar, Damar Kra, Vehesiras Marasa ben Osasa. So supposed to listen to this. So the pasuk that the Gemara quotes actually is by a bird karban, the bird offering, and the pasuk says, "Vehisir es murasa benotzasa." You shall take out. Murasa means the crop of the animal. Benotzasa, this is by a bird with its feathers. Veshlich osa etzel hamizbeach kedma. You shall go ahead and literally throw it by the eastern side of the mizbeach, el mekom hadeshen, to the place of the ash. So the Gemara says, "Im eino inyan lemizbeach hachitzon." So look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Ve'esiras muratza benotzasa el makom hadeshen." Then also what the Gemara is focusing on over here is the interesting statement, "El makom hadeshen," to the place where the ash is placed. That phrase is seemingly redundant. Once you tell me, ultimately again, once you tell me, Eitz HaMizbeach Kedma, that last phrase of El Mekom HaDeshen seems to be extraneous and unnecessary. So ultimately, again, says the Gemara, Eino Inyan, look at Rashi, L'michtav El Mekom HaDeshen, L'dishon Mizbeach HaChitzon. So we'll say, why do I need that phrase, El Mekom HaDeshen? So I don't need it to teach me regarding the Mizbeach HaChitzon, because by Mizbeach HaChitzon, by the outer altar, the Torah already tells me where to place the ash of the outer altar. Therefore, again, what do I do with this extraneous phrase? Ultimately, again, ultimately, again, the El Makom Hadeshen must be coming to teach me that what? That even the ashes of the inner altar shall be placed by the Makom of the Trumas Hadeshen, shall be placed ultimately again in the same place where the ashes of the outer altar are placed by the corner of the Mizbeach. Look at Rashi again. Tineu inyan, hi al makom hadeshen, the dishon mizbeach hapnimi v'hamenora, shesham haya mekomo demolin bo ki b'trumas hadeshen sham mizbeach hachitzon amunachshan. So both say, therefore, again, essentially a very simple drasha. There is an extra phrase, ultimately again, of el mekom hadeshen. I don't need that phrase to teach me about the ashes of the outer altar. Therefore, what do I use it for? The ashes of the inner altar. And to teach you that whatever leftover ashes there are of the Mizbeach HaPanimi are placed in the same place where the ashes of the outer altar are deposited as well. To which the Gemara says, Ema, idi Mizbeach HaChitzon, v'lik ba'ala makom. I don't understand, why don't you just say both phrases come to teach you regarding the ashes of the outer altar, and it's just coming to tell you where exactly to place them. Im kein lemakra itzel hamizbeach, my hadeshen. So we'll say, if that's the case, let it just say itzel hamizbeach. Why do I need this phrase, hadeshen? Da'afilu mizbeach hapnimi. So we'll say, therefore, again, hadeshen comes to teach you that even the ashes of the inner altar are halacha l'maaseh deposited in the same place as the ashes of the outer altar. So we'll say, This is really I just want to point out, this is a fascinating halacha that you would not glean from the psukim. You just would not glean it because the Torah doesn't express this explicitly. But we learn again from this extra phrase of El Makom Hadeshen that ultimately the ashes of the Mizbeach HaPnimi are placed in the same place as the ashes of the Mizbeach HaChitzon, by the pile, by the side of the Mizbeach. This is on the ground, by the Trumas Hadeshen. Incredible. It says the Menorah Minalan. So I'll say, so far that only teaches me about the Mizbeach HaPnimi, the inner altar. What about the ashes of the menorah? To which the Gemara says, Deshen Hadeshen. I will say, so the fact the Torah could have just said Mekom Deshen, instead it uses the phrase of Hadeshen. It uses an elongated form of the word. So I will say, whenever the Torah uses an elongated form, that comes to teach me a drasha as well. And therefore Hadeshen teaches me that the same way that the ashes of the inner altar are deposited in the same place as the ashes of the outer altar, so too the ashes of the menorah are also placed in the same spot as the ashes of the inner and outer altar. So we'll say, incredible halacha. Good, and this is halacha l'maisa. Says the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon argues with the previous Mishnah. Remember, in the previous Mishnah said that if you have Torin that have not reached the age to be offered, or Bnei Yonah which have aged out, they are not subject to Meilah. Rabbi Shimon comes along and he argues. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Torin shelo higiyas manon, molin b'hem. So Rabbi Shimon says, Torin, turtle doves, that have not yet reached the age where they could be used for karbanos, are subject to Meilah. So Rabbi Shimon says, if it hasn't yet reached the age, it's subject to Meilah. Bnei Yonah sha'avras manon lo nanin v'lo molin b'hem. But ultimately, again, Bnei Yonah, pigeons that have already aged out, you can't get hana, and also again, they are not subject to Meilah. So Rabbi Shimon is dafka coming to argue in the case of Torin, of turtle doves. The Tanakama in the previous Mishnah said that what? Torin that have not yet reached their age of sacrificial fitness are not subject to Meilah. Rabbi Shimon says, yes, they are. Even though they can't be offered up as a carbon, they are still going to be subject ultimately again to Meilah. To Meilah. Eric, that's at your own risk, my friend. That is exceeding the maximum weight for the tabletop stender. Yeah, good move, excellent. Says the Gemara. You know, it's a good musar. You have to know, in life, how much weight you could handle on your shoulders. That stender, that little swivel thing, pocket size at most. Not for chas and shas, it is not. Says the Gemara, Sabishlama Rabbi Shimon Kidiktani Taima. So we'll say, listen to this. So we'll say, so now we're going to get to the fundamental machlokes over here. What is it exactly what is the nekudas hamachlokes here? So we'll say, so Rabbi Shimon Shita, so we'll say, Rabbi Shimon essentially says like this, that an animal, in this case particularly a bird, that has not yet reached the age of sacrificial fitness, is still going to be subject to Meilah. Once it's aged out, he will agree it is no longer subject to Meilah. So we'll say the Rabbanan on the other hand argue on that. They say an animal that hasn't reached the age, as well as the animal that has aged out, are both the same. If you can't be offered up as a karban, then what? By definition, you're not subject to Meilah. So what's Rabbi Shimon's logic? So Rabbi Shimon's logic has been espoused elsewhere. Shai Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kal harai la'achar zman v'hekdisha b'soch zmano harehu b'lo sasa ve'ein bo kari. So we'll see Rabbi Shimon, he's actually espoused his shita elsewhere, I will say. So Rabbi Shimon says that halacha l'maisa, remember again, if you have an animal that is not yet fit for sacrificial service, on a simple level, what's the simplest case of this? Torah says that an animal is only fit to be offered up as a carbon when? After 8 days. Right? 8 days and on. What happens if you go ahead? Now, Rabbi Shimon's case is actually a very interesting one. Rabbi Shimon is, let's say you take an animal that is 6 days old, you designate it as a carbon, and you shecht it outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Shchutei chutz, outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So Rabbi Shimon says, if you went ahead and you did that, what's the halacha? Kal harai la'achar zmano v'hikdish b'soch zmano. If you have an animal that will be fit later on, but you're now offering it before its prescribed time. You're offering, meaning it will become fit. Wait another 2 days, and it's a perfectly fine carbon. But you're offering it up when it's 6 days old. So what happens? You shecht it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Harihu below sasa. You're in violation of a lav. Vein bo kares. Normally the halacha is for shrutei chutz. That you're chayv kares. But this is not a real case of shrutei chutz. Why not? Why not? Because the animal is not yet sacrificially fit. Right? Halachmais, it's only 6 days old. It's not yet really sacrificially fit. So it's a lav, but there's no kares. Shabbos said, so we see Rabbi Shimon holds that what? Even an animal that has not yet reached the age of sacrificial fitness, still what? Still what? Still has some level of sacrificial identity. How do I know that? How do I know that? Because I'm in violation of a lav. Remember again, if it was totally mufka, it was totally removed from the parsha of karbanos, then what? When I shechted it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, there would be nothing. The fact, okay, there's no kares because it's not a real carbon, but there's still a lav, which tells me there's still an element of sacrificial fitness. So Rabbi Shimon says, therefore, in the case of Torin, even though the turtle dove is not yet, it's not old enough, it's not mature enough to be offered up on the Mizbeach, ultimately, again, it could still be subject to Meilah. However, El Rabbanon, Maishnam Mechusr, but according to the Rabbanon, I will say, why is it that halacha l'maisa tar, a turtle dove that is not yet old enough, why should this be any different than a 6-day-old animal, which if shechted outside of the Beis Hamikdash, although you won't be subject to kares, will still be in violation of a lav, telling you that even an animal that has not yet reached the age threshold for sacrificial fitness still has some level of sanctity. If it has some level of sanctity, then what? That it should be subject to Meilah as well. To which the Gemara says, no. The Rabbanan will say, Amri, Mechusr Zman, Midi dehavi abal mum. So the bar pidyonhu. So the Rabbanan say, you're right. We agree in the case of Mechusr Zman. If you go ahead and you offer up a carbon outside of the Beis Hamikdash that is 6 days old, Mechusr Zman. So the reason why that carbon has some level of sanctity is because what is that called? That's comparable to a bal mum, to an animal with a blemish. In other words, Rabbi say, being too young is also a mum. The good news is it's a mum over. Right? It goes away. Just wait a little bit of time. And ultimately, again, that mum goes away. So it says the interest is, I'm sorry? For some people, right? So it says, ultimately, this is quite interesting. The Gemara is explaining that halacha l'maisa, if you have an animal that is too young, so an animal that is too young is the equivalent of a bal mum. Just like an animal that is a bal mum, the bar pidyon, who has the ability to be redeemed, so to an animal that is too young also has the ability to be redeemed. However, the Rabbanan say this doesn't apply to birds. Why not? Avahani ofos, kevan de'in mum postal ba'ofos, in la'ofos pidyon. But the Rabbanan will say that ultimately, again, the concept of mumin, interestingly enough, does not apply to birds. Ein tamos v'zichros ba'ofos. Remember, again, we've seen that ultimately neither gender nor mumin play a role in bird offerings. So therefore, the Rabbanan will say, in the case of Mechusr Zman, the reason that animal has some level of sacrificial sanctity is because it's no different than a bal mum. Just like a bal mum has pidyon, so to an animal that is Mechusr Zman has pidyon. But by Ophos, where what? Where there is no din ultimately of what? There is no din of mumin, therefore the din of Mechusr Zman doesn't apply as well. And therefore the Rabbanan will say that a turtle dove that is less than the required age essentially has no sacrificial sanctity. And because it has no sacrificial sanctity, ultimately not subject to Meilah. So we'll say this is the point of contention between Rabbi Shimon, ultimately again, and Rabbanan. Rabbi Shimon looks at a tar, at an underage turtle dove, as no different than any other carbon that is Mechusr Zman. And any other animal that is Mechusr Zman still has some level of sacrificial sanctity, and therefore is subject to Meilah. The Rabbanan say no, the din of Mechusr Zman is a din in a bal mum, but the concept of bal mum does not apply to Ophos. Therefore, an oath that is Mechusr Zman has no sacrificial sanctity, and therefore no Meilah. Amar Ula, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Kodshim shemesu. Both say if you have kodshim that died, right, the sacrificial animal that died, yotzu midei Meilah dvar Torah. Both say he's actually seen this before. That once you have a sacrificial animal that dies, it is no longer subject to Meilah midaoraisa. Yosef Ula v'kamer laha shmaita. Sula was sitting over and saying over this ruling. Amar Rav Chisda, man shamalachal Rabbi Yochanan Rabach. So Rav Chisda heard this. Right, and remember again, Ula is saying this over in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that once Kadshim die, they are no longer subject ultimately again to Meilah Mid'oraisa. Rav Chisda hears this and he says, Man Shamalacha Ul Rabbi Yochanan Rabach V'chi Kedusha Shebahen Leheichan Halcha. So Rav Chisda says, Ula, who in their right mind would listen to you and Rabbi Yochanan, your Rebbe? Right, who is such a crazy ruling? How can you say that an animal that died is no longer subject to Meilah? What happened to its sanctity? Right, when the animal was alive, it had sanctity. Just because it died, where did that sanctity go? Amarle tikshimas nisin. To which Ula responds, well, what about our Mishnah? Torin shli giyazmanon ubnei Yona sha'avrazmanon lo nanin v'lo mo'alin. So we'll say, what did the Mishnah say? The previous Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, if you have Torin, right, turtle doves that have not yet reached the age of of spiritual fitness, of sacrificial fitness, or you have pigeons that have aged out, you can't get hana, and they're not subject to Meilah. Why don't you say the same thing by the case of pigeons? By the case of pigeons which aged out, why would you say they're not subject to Meilah? After all, hachanami nema kedusha sheban lehecha halcha. Where did their kedusha go? Razvan has the same question over here in the Mishnah. Where did the kedusha go? Amrale, to which Rav Chisda says, modin lacha diika Meilah midrabanan. Ultimately, again, I would agree with you that halacha l'maisa, once the animals die, this is by kachim shemesu. If the animals die, that ultimately, again, they should still be subject to Meilah midrabanan. Because since they had sanctity, they now died, there should at least be Meilah midrabanan. However, kashili, but my problem is, mi'ika midi di me'ikara lo ispe Meilah, ulebasof iste Meilah. So we'll say what he was bothered by was the following. What he was bothered by is like this. Is using this logic, what you would then say is Kachim Kalim that died also would also be subject to Meilah, Midrabanan. Here's the problem. Going back for just a moment, when do Kachim Kalim become subject to Meilah? Remember again? Only after when? Only after Zrika. So remember again, to say Kache Kadashim that died, that they should be subject to Meilah, I understand. Because why? Because ultimately, again, they were subject to Meilah when they were alive. Meilah midaraisa. Now you want to tell me that they died, they should be subject to Meilah midrabanan. I could hear that. But to tell me that Kachim Kalim that died should be subject to Meilah, that doesn't make any sense. Why? Because Kachim Kalim, when they were alive, were not subject to Meilah. They only become subject to Meilah after Zrika. So could it be that something that when it was alive wasn't subject to Meilah, and now that it dies will be subject to Meilah? To Grish the Gemara says, is that true? Is meaning? So the Gemara is making the assumption: is that true? Something in its initial state, so to speak, was not subject to Meilah, that it can't become subject to Meilah later on. But look at this case. V'haikadam. Both say this is incredible. V'haikadam. The meikar lispei Meilah. So we'll say dam, sacrificial blood, is not initially subject to Meilah, right? So dam is not subject to Meilah. However, listen to this. Ulubasof ispe Meilah. Both say this is incredible. So blood ultimately again originally was not subject to Meilah, but halacha l'maisa later on it did become subject to Meilah. Where? Listen to this. Disnan. Dam betchila in mo'alin bo. We'll discuss why this is later on. But halacha l'maisa dam is not subject to the halachos of Meilah. Yet not yatzal nachal kidron mo'alin bo. Listen to this. What would they do with dam? So remember, the residual dam was poured down the drain, right? There were these shisin, these drains. So we saw shisin yesterday's daf also, but these drains, the drains would drain out into the Kidron Valley. Right, the Kidron Valley. So I'll say, what would happen with the dam? So the farmers would often want to go ahead and take the dam and use it for what? Fertilizer. So we'll say, so now the Gemara says over here, amazingly enough, dam inside of the Beis HaMikdash was not subject to Meilah. Yet when it flowed out into the Kidron Valley, it was subject to Meilah. So we're going to get into the technicalities of this, but what do you see from here? You see from here that something that you could have a situation of something that initially was not subject to Meilah, and then later on does become subject to Meilah. So based on the dam paradigm, I can make the argument that what? That Kachim Kalim, which when they were alive were not subject to Meilah, but then what? once they die, maybe do become subject to Meilah Midrabanan. To which the Gemara says, no. Amri Hasam Nami Ika Meilah Meikar. It's not true, by the way. Blood is subject to Meilah initially. When? Amud Beis. Domarav Hamakis Dan Lebehemas Kachim Asr Banha Amolinba. We'll say that there is a case of dam. What's the case of dam? If one does bloodletting. We'll say, so if one has a sacrificial animal that is ill. So remember again, Talmudic remedies, I will say, could pretty much be consolidated into three major things: bloodletting, undiluted wine, and fatty meat. Like that's the cure for all ailments, which sounds pretty good. Besides the bloodletting, right? The meat and the wine sounds good. As long as right. Drink. I guess if you drink the wine, eat the meat, then you can do whatever you want, right? Bloodletting, not bloodletting. So again, I will say, remember, this is very important that in general, remember again, Chazal's knowledge of medicine was not based in Torah. It was based on whatever conventional medical norms there were. So again, we know that for a very, very, very long time, it was assumed that bloodletting could take care of most maladies. And again, the fatty meat and the diluted wine, it's just a crowd pleaser. It's just mamish. It always works. So the Gemara says over here, if you have a situation, ultimately again, if you have a situation of a sacrificial animal that is sick, so you would be permitted to do bloodletting on that animal. So we'll say, what's the status of that blood? That blood would be subject to Meilah. Interestingly enough, because it became so. The Gemara says, don't bring me a raya. Ultimately, again, don't bring me a raya from blood, because halacha l'maisa, blood is subject to Meilah even before it flows out from the Kidron Valley. So let's see the rest of this. Gufa, Amrav Hunamarav, Hamakis don lehemas kachim asr ba'na molinbo. So we'll say, now we're gonna pick up on this because it's actually quite interesting. So now you told me that if you do bloodletting from a sacrificial animal, halacha l'maisa, ultimately again, the blood itself is subject to Meilah. Masiv Rav Hamnuna. So we'll listen to this. Rav Hamnuna contrasts this, and we're going to get into this because it's actually quite fascinating. Contrast this with the following: Chalav hamukdashin ubeitzei torin lo nanin v'lo molin. But we'll say, listen to the following. What happens if you have a sacrificial animal and you milk the animal? What's the status of the milk? So the halacha is that the milk itself, similarly again, the eggs of sacrificial birds, beitzei torin, lo nanin, ideally you shouldn't get hana, v'lo molin. But ultimately, again, it is not subject to Meilah. Not subject to Meilah. So the assumption is that what? The assumption is that halacha l'maisa, that blood would have the same status as what? As milk and as eggs. Yet we see that milk and eggs are not subject to Meilah, and you told me that blood is. So what's going on over here? Amrlei ki kamina lagabe dam dilomis kayemes below dam. Well, there's a fundamental difference, right? An animal cannot live without blood. Blood is an indispensable part to the life of the animal. Aval chalav de kamakaima below chalav. Lo, say so. But eggs and milk, which are not necessary to the life of the animal itself, halacha l'maisa, are not subject to Meilah. So essentially what the Gemara is saying is like this: it is only items that are part of the actual, or I should say, an indispensable part of the organic continuity of the animal that are subject to Meilah. But things that just because it comes from the animal doesn't automatically make it subject to Meilah. So blood, which is by definition a necessity for the continuity, the organic continuity of the animal, ultimately again will be subject to Meilah. Milk, eggs, which is something additional, will not be subject to Meilah. Master Mishash says, really, is that true? What about Hazavel va'peresh shebechatzar? So listen to this. So remember again, in the Beis HaMikdash, animals were often kept inside of a pen, because remember the Beis HaMikdash itself sold animals. So you had a pen where animals were kept. So we'll say, what's the halachah? In that pen you had manure. So what's the status of the manure? Ein nanin ve'ein mo'alin. Ultimately, again, so the manure itself, you can't get hana from it, but ultimately, again, it is not subject to Meilah as well. The yiplu dameha lelishka. But ultimately, again, I will say, if you sell it off, the proceeds go to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, one second, I will say, so why shouldn't the manure be subject to Meilah? After all, again, what's the criteria for being subject to Meilah? What's the criteria? What's the criteria? It has to be an indispensable part of the animal. I will say, if the animal is unable to relieve itself, the animal will die. So the ability to produce excrement is obviously something that is an indispensable part of the life of the animal. So I don't have to say, Amai hachanami lo mekayim v'lo perish. An animal cannot live if it doesn't excrete. Therefore, the excrement, the manure, should have the same status of blood, and therefore should be subject to Meilah. To which the Gemara says, Amri, so the Gemara says, my iriya hadein perish min alma ka'asile azil hai asi achrina la fuke dam megufe. Supposed to listen to this. Actually, quite a fascinating distinction. Excrement is the result of what? Things which are external to the animal. Supposed to say, when does the animal excrete? The animal eats something, digests it, and excretes whatever, keeps whatever it has to keep, and excretes the rest. So the concept of excrement is something that is generated by something external to the animal. Masha'en kain, blood is something that is what? That is part and parcel of the animal itself. So the Gemara is suggesting now a twofold. So number one, things which are not part and parcel of the animal itself, like milk, like eggs, will not be subject to Meilah. Furthermore, things which are generated from items external to the animal, like excrement, which is generated by things that the animal eats, will also not be subject to Meilah, as opposed to blood, which is part of the body itself of the animal. To which the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, Katani lo nen v'lo molin, v'damav lo lishka. So again, remember we said that ultimately, again, the proceeds. So now I understand now why the excrement itself is not subject to Meilah. But interestingly enough, what is the halacha? If you sell the excrement, who gets the proceeds? The proceeds of the excrement sale go to the Beis Hamikdash. Misayei elei Rabbi Elazar. The Rabbi Elazar kamakom shamru chachamim kadosh ve'eno kadosh damav yiplu lilishka. So again, this makes sense according to Rabbi Elazar, because what does Rabbi Elazar say? Anytime you have a concept of kadosh ve'eno kadosh, which Rabbi means nanin lo nanin v'lo molin. So anytime you have a rabbinic prohibition on something, that ultimately what halacha l'maisa you can't get hana, but it's also not subject to Meilah. So halacha l'maisa, the proceeds belong to the Beis Hamikdash. So we'll say a number of very important facts here. So first of all, again, blood itself is sometimes subject to Meilah and sometimes not. If it's just the normal case of sacrificial service, where the blood is being sprinkled and then being poured, it is not subject to Meilah until it trickles out into the Kidron Valley. Once it reaches the Kidron Valley, it will be subject to Meilah. We'll see this sugya midrabanan. However, again, if you do bloodletting on a sacrificial animal, then what? Then halacha l'maisa, it will be subject to Meilah midaoraisa. Milk and eggs we're going to get to. Actually, it's our next Mishnah, so we'll leave milk and eggs for just a moment. Excrement. I will say, what's the halacha? Lo nanin v'lo molin, not subject to Meilah. Why not? The klal is very important, because apparently only items which are an indispensable part of the life and of the body of the animal are subject to Meilah. Blood, which is part and parcel of the body and necessary for the life of the animal, subject to Meilah. Excrement, which is generated for something external from the animal, not subject to Meilah. Milk and eggs, which are ultimately, again, not an indispensable part of the animal, not subject to Meilah. They both say, just so you know, how do we pass in, because you know this is bothering you. Right? How do we pass in halacha l'maisa again in Rabbi Shimon versus the Tanakama? We'll say, what about underage turtle doves or aged out pigeons? We paskin like the Rabbanon that they are not subject to Meilah, which is not a chiddush, because ultimately, again, at the end of the day, in order to be subject to Meilah, what has to be the halacha? You have to be sacrificially fit. If you're not, now again, there of course, remember, there's an exception to this, meaning you could be subject to Meilah even if you're not going to be sacrificed, if you're kedushas for bet kabayis. We're going to discuss this as well. But it's me we're talking about for karbanos. In order to be subject, if you are a karban, in order to be subject to Meilah, you must be sacrificially fit. So therefore, again, if you're too young, if you're too old, halacha l'maisa, you are not subject to Meilah. Beautiful. Next Mishnah. Chalav hamukdashim. So we'll say, what about, again, so now, again, we've seen this already, a little bit anticlimactic, but says the Mishnah, Chalav hamukdashim. I will say, just want to point out, you have to admit it, that you never thought Meilah would be this exciting, right? I'm just saying, like, these are great Gemaras, right? You hear Meilah, and again, you think to yourself, oh boy, okay, I know, I just gotta make it till January 4th. Just gotta make it till January 4th. I'm almost there. I know if you're on the email list for the Aguda, for the Siyam HaShas, they send out like daily emails. Like it feels like 5 emails a day, right? 99 blot, I think was the last one. 97 blot, right? So it's incredible, but it's also incredible because like so sometimes you think when we get to these Masechtas, okay, let me just hold on. I've made it mamish almost 7.5 years. Just hold on a bit more. All I have to do is pretend like I'm paying attention for another 3 months. Also, what you have to admit, the truth is these Gemaras are very understandable and very graspable, right? And the truth is, again, it's also very helpful. It's very nice that it's a lot of broken up Mishnayos and Gemaras, smaller digestible pieces. But it's incredible. You can actually emerge from these Masechtas knowing what happened in the Beis HaMikdash. It's incredible. Chalav HaMukdashin uBeitzei Torin. So we'll say if you have blood, ultimately, should we put on the air conditioning here a little bit? Does it work? Okay. Also, we have a building fund. If anyone, so again, actually, the dedication opportunity for the new compressors in the building is still open. It's still open. We can work out a payment plan. It could be yours. So it says the Mishnah, Chalav HaMukdashin. Ultimately, again, if you have blood from karbanos. Oh, by the way, that wasn't a joke, actually. The dedication opportunity is really open, if you want it. Beitzei Mukdashin or Beitzei Torin. So we'll say if you have blood from karbanos or eggs from birds. Chalav. So we'll say if you have milk from animals, animal milk, right, carbon milk, or again eggs from birds, from sacrificial birds, lo nanin v'lo mola. So we'll say, so ideally over here, when we say lo nanin, it means we don't want you getting hana. Why can't you get hana from it? Why not? Because it comes from a sacrificial item. So therefore you're not supposed to get hana, but it is not subject to Meilah. We'll say very important qualification. When is that true? Because Shem is Beach. Now we'll say the Gemara, as we're going to see, fundamentally misunderstands what this means. But for our purpose, Kachem is Beach means if it's going to be sacrificed. A carbon. However, but Kachem the Kabayis. We'll say, listen to this. If you have an animal that is pledged for Kachem the Kabayis, which means what Rabbi say? Financial sanctity. If you have a carbon that is pledged for kachim, meaning I'm makdish this animal for financial sanctity, which also means what do you do with the animal that is pledged for kachim b'ed kabayis? What do you do with that? You sell it and use the proceeds for the Beis HaMikdash. So in that case, hikdish tarnagoles molin bava beitzasa. So we'll say therefore, if you are makdish a chicken, for example, ultimately again Meilah applies to the chicken, to the eggs. Chamor, if you are makdish a chamor, a donkey, molin bava bechalba. Ultimately, again, both the donkey itself and its milk are subject to. So we'll say a very important qualification. That halacha l'maisa, when do we say that halacha l'maisa, the eggs or the milk of a carbon is not subject to Meilah? That is when the animal is going to be offered up as a carbon. But if that one has physical sanctity. But if the animal has financial sanctity, that means every single part of the animal is sanctified. The eggs, the milk, and they will all be subject to Meilah. Says the Gemara, So we'll say what the Gemara now is assuming is as follows. And this is interesting why the Gemara made this assumption. The Gemara is saying that when we were speaking about Kadshe Mizbeach, that Kadshe Mizbeach means animals that are pledged, that have financial sanctity, but the goal is I'm going to sell them off and use the proceeds to purchase karbanos. So if that's the case, that the animal has financial sanctity and it's going to be sold and used to purchase karbanos, so why wouldn't the eggs and the milk be sanctified as well? No, you're misunderstanding what we're saying. We'll say ultimately again, this is what it means to say. We'll say, when do we say that the milk and the eggs of the carbon do not have any level of Meilah, any level of sanctity? That's when what? The animal itself is pledged as a carbon. If the animal itself is pledged as a carbon, then the milk and the eggs have no sanctity, right? Not subject to Meilah. Avol, hikdishu kidushastam l'gab mizbeach. But we'll say if the animal has financial sanctity, i.e., you pledged its zayit to the Beis HaMikdash, then what? Then we'll say again, Once an animal has financial sanctity, whether you pledged its financial sanctity in a way that I'm going to sell off this animal and use the proceeds to purchase karbanos, or I'm going to sell off the animal and the proceeds ultimately again will go to the Beis Hamikdash, is irrelevant. In that case, the animal in its entirety is kadosh. Both the body of the animal as well as what? The eggs and the milk and the blood and anything that comes from it. Tarnagolas, molim, beisasa. So, for example, if you pledged a chicken, let's say you pledged a chicken. Remember again, a chicken has no sacrificial sanctity. It would only have kedushas damim. So ultimately, again, it would be subject to Meilah. The chicken, its eggs, chamora. Donkey is even a bigger example. But so you can be makdish a donkey for beta kamayis. Obviously, a donkey is not sacrificially fit under any circumstances. Yet, if you pledged financial sanctity with that animal, then what? The donkey is subject to Meilah, and ultimately, again, it's milk goes on. So therefore, Rabbi said we emerge with a fascinating halachic construct. If you have an animal that is itself is actively pledged as a karban, then Rabbi say, what is the halacha? What is the halacha? Then ultimately, again, it is only the body of the animal itself, potentially with its blood, depending on the circumstances, that is subject to Meilah. The eggs, the milk, not subject to Meilah. If an animal has financial sanctity, then what? Then every single part of the animal is subject to Meilah, including its milk, as well as including its eggs. But also stop over here for today. We're going to pick up here tomorrow. I want to share with you just a brief idea for Rosh Hashanah. I will say also, just please look at the schedule for Daf Yomi. Meretz Hashem, I'll be giving this shir over Yom Tiv. You can't nap anyway, so you might as well, Meretz Hashem, maximize the day. I will say I'll be learning in Meretz Hashem. What time is it? 5:10 both days?
No, tomorrow 5:10, next day 5 to 8.
Because Saeed will put it out to Meretz Hashem on the WhatsApp, and I also look forward to learning with all of you over the course of Yom Tov. I will say to share with you just a short idea for Rosh Hashanah. So I will say, I saw a beautiful idea by the Ger Rebbe and by the bells of the Sar Shalom of bells. It says something so beautiful. You know, the Gemara says, we've heard this concept many times before. The Gemara in Masechus Rosh Hashanah says, Yom Echad B'Shana, Chashuva B'Shana. That one day of the year is considered to be like an entire year. Now, the truth is, the context of that statement is talking about by a melech, right? Where the Gemara is discussing how you reckon the years of a king. So if a king reigned even one day in a particular year, that one day is considered to be like an entire year of his reign. But the Svarim understand that concept in a very different way. Yom Echad B'Shana, Chashuva Shana means what? That you could redeem an entire year in one day. You could redeem an entire year in one day. That even if halacha l'maisa, unfortunately, I have not maximized my year, and even if I have not made the most of my time, and I have not optimized my brachos, and I have not lived up to my potential, I could redeem an entire year in one day. In one day. On one day of Erev Rosh Hashanah, I could redeem a year in its entirety. And in fact, the Belzer Rebbe says something so beautiful. Plus, this observation, I saw this late last night, and the mamish blew me away. He says, in Baruch Aleinu, we said it in Shachris, in Baruch Aleinu, we say what? We say Baruch Aleinu. Siddur. Sfardim have Baruch Aleinu? Yeah, you say Baruch Aleinu?
A longer one.
A longer one. Perfect, thank you. So listen to this. So what do we say in Shemona Esrei? We say Baruch Aleinu Hashem Elokeinu Es Hashana Hazos. Bless us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bless on our behalf, Hashem our God, this year. The Belzer Rebbe says something amazing. We say this same formulation today on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Baruch Aleinu Hashem Elokeinu Es Hashana Hazos. We said it by Shachris. We're going to say it by Mincha. Listen to the words of the Rebbe. He says, "V'zeu nirmaz betfilas Erev Rosh Hashanah, shemevakshim bebirchas Hashanah kimo b'chol yimos Hashanah, Baruch Aleinu Es Hashana Hazos." I said this morning in Shachris. I'm going to say it again by Mincha later on today. Hashem, please bless me this year. Bring bracha this year. B'pashtos, eino muvan. Madua zekukim anu adayin letfilas ubakasha. Kasher od zman katzer yav ayom b'yifne b'sim hashana. What do you mean, bless upon me this year? There's just a couple of hours left of this year. Ach le'emor hakavana she'akadosh baruch hu yivarech es hashos hama'oto shnar. So we'll say, what's the pshat? The pshat is because you could still salvage an entire year in one day. The whole day, Yom Echad Bashana, Chashuv Kashana. One day could be like an entire year. I've seen human nature is such that we often tend not to maximize the opportunities that come our way. And so as a year goes by and we come to the close of Tafshinai, Tasa 5779, we reflect, and hopefully there are good things that we've accomplished, good things we've done. But I think for many of us, there's a little bit of a feeling of sadness because I didn't do all the things that I wanted to do. I didn't accomplish all the things I wanted to accomplish. And the year's not over. Baruch Halinu as Hashana Azos, Yom Echad B'Shana Chashuv Hashana. One day could count as an entire year. Over the course of one day, you could salvage an entire year. And Rabbi we have an incredible schus. Because this year, the last day of our year is a Sunday. We're not running off to work. We don't have hopefully 1,000,001 different responsibilities. It's not the normal rush of a regular day. And so there's an opportunity ultimately again to redeem an entire year over the course of one day. So you'll ask, but how can you redeem an entire year over the course of one day? So I would suggest the following. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Al shlosha dvarem ha'olam omet. There are three things that sustain the universe. Al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avoda, ve'al gemilas chasodim. You want to redeem your day, you want to redeem your year? Find time today for three pure acts of Torah, Avoda, and Gemilas Chasadim. We daven Shachris. If you daven Shachris with Kavanah, incredible. Maybe I didn't have the Kavanah like I really should for a tefillah. So we'll say I make a suggestion. Make sure that your mincha today is something fantastic. Make sure your mincha today is something otherworldly. And if you're concerned that maybe you know what mincha is going to be a little bit rushed, take the time today to see a few kapitlach of Tehillim. But say them with kavanah. Daven to your God, daven to your Father with a full heart, not distracted in 1,000,000 different ways, but have a pure moment of avoda, a pure moment of you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you have to lock yourself away somewhere and turn off your devices and turn off everything and make sure no one knows where you are for 10 minutes to have that pure moment of avoda, then do that. Have a pure moment of Torah. So again, we just learned Torah, Baruch Hashem, but make sure you take a few extra moments today to learn Torah b'kedusha u'b'tara, to learn Torah without distractions. So whatever it is you want to learn, it's irrelevant. That's up to you. As long as it's Torah, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And Gemilos Chasadim. I will say, Erev Yom Tov is always hectic. It's always hectic. In Baruch Hashem, in a household with a mishpacha, there's always 1,000,000 things to do. Carve out time today for a pure act of chesed. Call someone who you know is struggling with something. Bring over some flowers, bring over some cake, bring over some cookies to someone who you know is having a difficult time in life. None of us is too busy for that. I don't care who you are or what your responsibilities are. Carve out time for a pure act of chesed. And if we do this today on Rosh Hashanah, if we do these three things today, a pure act of Torah, of learning, a pure act of avodah, a real tefillah with kavanah, and a pure act of gemilos chasadim, then Yom Echad Bashana Nechshav Bashana. Baruch Aleinu as Hashana Hazos. You could redeem an entire year in one day. 3 moments, 3 pure acts, Torah, Avoda, Gemilos, Chasadim. And there is no telling what we could accomplish. You could redeem an entire year, Abosai, not even in a whole day, but just in a couple of moments. If you do 3 acts of Torah, Avoda, Gemilos, Chasadim, it's a retroactive clarification. You do 1 day of Torah, Avodah, Gemilas, Chasadim, you make it into a year of Torah, Avodah, Gemilas, Chasadim. We'll say that's the power of today. Should be Zocham Yirtz Hashem to make the most of this day, we'll say, because Erev Rosh Hashanah, it's a powerful day. It's a powerful day. You could do everything. You know, some people are last minute people. If you're a last minute guy, today is your day. Because at the end of the day, this is mamish, the last minute. I don't mean last minute in an ominous way, I will say, because I want to say something about this. I don't mean an ominous way, like last minute before the guillotine comes down. Chas v'shalom. Chakadosh Baruch Hu loves us, and He's going to give us incredible brachas. But I mean last minute, to do all the things you know you've wanted to do but haven't had a chance or haven't given yourself a chance to do. All the Torah, all the avodah, all the chesed I wanted to do over the course of the year but I didn't get to do, today I'm going to do it. Today I'm going to do it. I don't mean for hours, because most of us don't have hours, but if between the three you dedicate 1 hour out of the day, 1 hour out of the day for all three, not 3 hours, not 1 hour for each, 1 hour sum total to devote to Torah, avodah, and gemilas chasadim, then you could retroactively infuse Kedusha into your entire year. And imagine coming tonight before HaKadosh Baruch Hu being able to say, Ribono Shel Olam, I just want to tell you, thank you for giving me another year of life, and I just want to tell you, it was a year of Torah, avodah, and gemilas chasadim. And I will say, if you make that happen today, then you could come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu with that declarative statement. You gave me life, and I gave you a year of Torah, avodah, and gemilas chasadim. And in the zechus of making today a day like that, and retroactively infusing that into the rest of our year, maybe be zochem, Yetz Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us an incredible year. Tafshin Pei, you see the Rebbe's today are saying Tafshin Pei is Tehei Shnas Pedus, should be a year of redemption, should be a year of Geula. You could hear the footsteps of Mashiach. You could hear that great things are happening in our world. You could feel that there's a resurgence of Ruchnius, and you could feel that there's something special bubbling beneath the surface of Klal Yisrael. We're a strong nation. We have Eretz Yisrael. You see the incredible Ruchnius, the incredible Torah, the incredible Chesed. And you could feel that there's something incredible that just wants to happen. And it just requires us to push ourselves just a little bit more. We don't recognize the kolchos we have. We don't recognize the abilities we have. We don't realize that Mashiach is waiting to come, and all He's waiting for is us. He's waiting for us. He's waiting for you. He's waiting for me. He's waiting for us to live up to our potential, to maximize, to actualize ourselves. Then He's ready to come. Teshnas Pedus. This should be the year where we experience national Gula. This should be the year where we experience personal Gula. I will say, I just want to end off by also saying that I want to issue an apology to the shir as well. I have to ask Mechila on a couple of different levels. First of all, because sometimes I apologize. Sometimes, if all of you, I'm in awe of all of you, because all of you make the effort to come to shir every morning, and it's incredible. This is my job, so I don't get any credit for it. This is what I do. But the rest of you have day jobs. This is my day job, Baruch Hashem. That's good, and that you come to learn. And I ask Mechila because sometimes we go a little bit quickly. Sometimes I see the quizzical expressions on people's faces, and that's my fault because sometimes they go a little bit quickly, and ultimately I don't do a good enough job explaining. So I ask Mechila for being mevazvez your zman. Sometimes you come and I don't do an adequate job explaining the sugis, explaining the gemaras, and I hope that you recognize that when you have those moments where you don't understand something, please put all the blame on me and none of the blame on the Torah Kedosha. The Gemara is always clear. Sometimes the Maggid Shir is not so clear. Sometimes I ask him Mechila for that. And number two, if over the course of the year in any way there was a joke that I made or something that I said that Chas V'Shalom was pogim in the covet of anyone in the Shir, I ask you Mechila, I say that I'm truly sorry. It is an incredible zechus to learn with all of you each and every day. And I just hope that Emir Tzshem HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us a year of Chaim, a year of Bracha, a year of Mazel, a year when we are Zoche Emir Tzshem to be able to learn HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah together, Bi'ava, and with Zrizos, Ba'amkos, U'berachbos, and we should be Zoche Emir Tzshem, that this is the year we're going to Messiahim Shas together. We're going to begin Shas together. We're going to grow together. We're going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu together in the midst of fatigue, with coffee that flows like water, with mezonos that Baruch Hashem magically appear thanks to Ari every Sunday morning. We should just be Zochim Mir Hashem to have a year of growth together. We should be Zochim Mir Hashem to have a year of Avodas Hashem together. I wish each of you an incredible Shnas Bracha. All of us together with our mishpachos, together with our people, together with Am Yisrael, together with all humanity, should be written in the Sefer HaChaim, should be inscribed in the Sefer HaChaim. I know everyone here needs their own brachas and Yeshuas, personal Yeshuas. Kadosh Baruch Hu should just give each of you, because you're each so precious, exactly what you need and how you need it. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us our individual brachas, our collective brachas. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us the Mashiach, the Bayis Shlishi, and Eretz Hashem. No matter what happens in the coming year, one thing is clear, which is that we should be Zocheh Eretz Hashem to continue to learn together. We might start Eretz Hashem here, but halavai before the year is out. May we Zocheh Eretz Hashem to continue our learning in a rebuilt Yerushalayim, with a third Beis HaMikdash, with the Melech HaMashiach together. Rabbi Amen. Amen.